I'm Leslie ClarkLoeser. I'm a dermatologist in South Florida. I've been practicing for about 15 years and am definitely a bit of an energy-based device laser nerd, happily and proudly. And I have avoided the body space for a long time, mostly because I was a bit skeptical and needed to be convinced. So this guy I resonate with, and I don't know if anybody else does here, but he says he's a skeptic not because he doesn't want to believe, but because he wants to know. And that is very much in keeping kind of with who I am. This guy happens to be the founder of the American Skeptic Society. He's a scientific writer, an author, and he's a scientific historian. So just about me, I said I'm a born skeptic and a trained skeptic. I wanted to believe in the tooth fairy from a young age and Santa Claus, but nobody gave me enough evidence. But that said, I'm always open to discussion. I think that's what we always have to be open to is new evidence. And I further kind of trained my skeptic skills when I did a dermatopharmacology fellowship, which really forces you to look at things with even more of a critical eye, and it helps you to evaluate the evidence that's being presented to us. And then on another side, I am very interested personally in wellness, fitness, and nutrition. So we'll go back to last year in April at ASLMS in Dallas. I saw all these signs that didn't look exactly like these signs, but there were lots of signs that said Emsculpt and had these incredibly fit, beautiful bodies. And I was like, what is going on? I need to hear about what's happening here. So I went over to the Emsculpt booth and I said, what are you guys talking about? And they basically said, we're talking about muscle. Not these other areas, we're talking about muscle. And muscle is the largest component of our soft tissue. And in a space that I had been avoiding for so long because I was afraid of under-delivering and over-promising on the different technologies that were available, this was something so interesting and new to me. And so I sat down and started talking to them. I said, what is this high fem? Because that's what you saw everywhere, high fem, high fem. And for those of you who don't know, and you may already know that high fem stands for high intensity focused electromagnetic energy. And what it's doing is it's externally stimulating and causing these super maximal contractions that are far more forceful than that is possible for us to voluntarily create on our own. And you're doing it in this fixed period of time, creating 20,000 forced muscle contractions in a 30-minute period of time. So this was fascinating to me. But I wasn't entirely convinced yet. So it hadn't really hit the marketplace. That means I really only was able to touch base with the people who have been doing the clinical studies, which is not really real-world use yet. So I liked where they were going with this, but I was gonna need to know a little bit more for me personally before I jumped on board. It was tempting. It was really, really tempting, but I needed to hear from my colleagues who were now purchasing it, what their experience was like. So I said, give me a little bit more data. We saw the data that you presented, and this is, really a snapshot that's been fairly consistent across the board in the data that they're seeing in terms of reduction of fat in the treated areas, which has been an average of about 19% and an average of 16% increase in muscle production or muscle mass. So for me, and it shows here on the computer, this is an MRI picture, this is actually CT, where you see that reduction in the subcutaneous tissue and the increase in the muscle mass. So I was paying attention. Here's another just bigger picture of that, which is 1 month post the 4 treatments that were done in the clinical studies. So they did the 4 treatments over a 2-week period of time, and here's 1 month post that. Here are another few pictures. So what was available to us, this is what the space for the most part looked like. And I could read the data and I can evaluate the data, but then I also had my patients as a resource to me, or other practitioners, clinicians telling me what their experience was to date. and I failed to be impressed. I said, if I'm going to be spending a whole lot of money investing, I know that I can have a return on the investment, but at the same time, I'm so sensitive to their happiness that if I disappoint patients, and I'm trying to truly, I'm a terrible salesperson, terrible. I couldn't sell Girl Scout cookies when I was a Girl Scout. I truly have to be on board if I'm going to recommend something. And so with these other places, I was not convinced. And so you can do Emsculpt in combination with these if you currently do them and you like them. But these, to me, were missing the mark in certain areas. They really weren't addressing fat. I mean, now you have something that it has this great side effect of treating fat, but it's primarily addressing the muscle. And there's things that we just don't necessarily love about some of the other devices in terms of unwanted side effects, like paresthesias and paradoxical fat hypertrophy, things that you definitely don't want to see. And this was actually interesting when you saw pictures of all the nice buttocks around, is that you can do a non-invasive butt lift. And we know that we are finally back, thank God. Adriana and I were talking about this yesterday, in this age where we actually are embracing curves again. Like, we want to see curves, we want to see fit bodies. This isn't like when I grew up in the 80s and you had the supermodels that looked like they needed to eat a sandwich. But this is, we like curves, and so we have the opportunity to increase curves. The other thing that I think is really important with this device is that you mentioned this younger patients. Younger patients are interested in creating muscle, and this is a really is very appealing to them. Thinner patients, you can see a measurable difference in thinner patients, and thinner BMI, lower BMI patients were not ideal and still are not ideal for some of the fat destruction techniques that we currently are seeing. And you can couple it with other devices, and males. Males really are intrigued by this procedure. They love the idea that it can enhance what it is that they might be trying to achieve otherwise in their lives. If they're athletic, athletes are very interested in it. I'll tell you about dad bods, but dads are very interested in it. It's so important, though, when you decide, you make that decision to go into the body space, that you really take the time to set yourself up for success. And this is a kind of busy slide, but I'll go through it pretty quickly. But if you have any questions afterwards, we can go into it in more detail. I think it's important when you get a device like this to have a point person in your office. It doesn't mean that person is the only person that knows how to operate it, but that person is responsible ultimately for everything that happens with that device. So whether it's following up with patients, making sure that that they are coming in for the scheduled number of procedures or treatments that are required. They're the point person for their contact at the company. They're responsible for making sure your photography is on point. Cross-train everybody, but have that point person there. The second thing is treat your staff. If you're not treating your staff, you're missing the boat. Your staff is your greatest sales force in the office. And if they're not on board and they don't believe in it, you're not going to do as well. So it's so critical to treat your staff, and I'll show you in the next slide an example of that. Photography is absolutely crucial. About 70% of my practice is in aesthetics, and a picture is something that can make or break an outcome, truthfully. If you don't have great reproducible before and after photos, you're missing something very important with regard to patients, especially in the body space. Body space, the changes can be very minimal, but if they're measurable and demonstratable to the patient, you have that as an objective measure to present to your patient. And so I think that for me, what I did was I invested in a 3D camera, and so I just wanted to mention what I have here. I got the Quantificare system. For me, it was a little bit less costly than some of the other systems out there, but it had so much capability, and I'm going to show you some of the images. I'm a new user to Emsculpt, so I've really only had it for about a quarter. So the pictures that I'm going to show you, and I actually got the camera about a month into having the device, and you'll see where I kind of missed the boat, where my initial photos are with our other camera system, and then we were able to have a follow-up photo with a Quantificare, which specifically LifeViz. If you're not taking advantage of social media, like you said, again, you're not you're missing the boat on something else, which is free marketing. Social media is incredible. Hashtags don't have a cost, right? So it's something that you can make yourself noticed, get noticed. People can reach you easily through social media. So if you're not doing that, our point person is responsible for the social media associated with the device. That's another responsibility that she has. Social media influencers, something that you had mentioned, so incredibly helpful. But the one thing that I don't do is treat my social media influencers for free, nor do I pay them. I discount, and I give them a discount, but they need to feel somehow invested in the procedure. And I think if they feel like they have something invested in it, they're going to be a little bit more critical about their outcomes. And if they are convinced, and they're that much more convincing when they're talking about their experience. So we do have them invest a little bit in their treatments. Office events, summer bodies are made in winter, get people started, in the winter months. Mommy makeovers, dad bod no more. Women, we didn't talk about this in the other slides, but I have a ton of women in my practice. I have 3 children. I think that a woman who's had a pregnancy, you're going to be hard-pressed to find one that doesn't have some component or amount of diastasis in the rectus sheath. And this is something that is hugely helpful for that. And that's one of the things we'll point out in some of the photos, but it's been very helpful. And then also to echo what you said about coupling with a local fitness studio or a nutritionist, you really can make it a somewhat a comprehensive effort. So, treating your staff. This is one of my MAs, and we got the device, we knew we were going to treat them, and we didn't have our camera system yet. So we said everybody who's going to be treated has to take a picture. We don't want your face in the picture, we just have to have a picture. So she took her picture at home, and she did 4 treatments over 2 weeks, and this picture is 1 month later with the Quantificare camera. And we don't have before and after measurements, but I can tell you she weighs 2 pounds more in the follow-up picture. So she's 2 pounds heavier in body weight. When she saw her picture, she said, I knew my clothes were fitting me better. She's like, but I wasn't convinced that I looked better. She wasn't, and so when she saw that, she just can't stop talking about it. Where she would have been embarrassed to ever show her pre-photo to anybody, now she walks around and shows everybody. So that's, your internal sales force that's completely buying in, because when they see the results on themselves, they sell so much more convincingly. It's an authentic sale. So here's a Pilates instructor. Again, she was one of our social media influencers, but we got her in before we had our camera system, unfortunately. And here she is 1 month out after her 4 treatments. Another social media influencer, she's a rapper. She's got, something ridiculous, like 400,000 followers. It's unbelievable the amount of calls and contacts that we get based off of her post, but she's paying something. I saw her first when she wanted to do this. I said, why would you, you're in incredible shape. Is this gonna actually make a difference? If you notice the dates on here, you can see that there's only 10 days in between. So this isn't after 4 weeks, this is after immediately right before her 4th treatment. So it's after her 3rd treatment, right before her 4th. But I was coming to the meeting and I wanted to show you what it looks like at this point in time, if you can measure a difference, and there is a measurable difference. And when you can give the patient that objective data that there is in fact a change, it makes an impact. So here is another way you can take advantage of the system. So I look at those pictures and she's happy. This woman thinks she looks so much better. I look at the pictures and I'm like, okay, I guess if you feel it, but I don't necessarily see it in that picture. So what you can do is, and I don't see if it can play here. Maybe not. How do I do it?
Next slide.
Is it the next slide? Oh, here we go. There you go. That makes sense. How do I play it now? Click on it. Let's see. Okay, so you can get a full 3D picture rotation. And what you can notice, and wait till she goes around again, is she said, I feel like I'm more, oh, what happened? I went backwards. Hold on, let me see. So when she starts to turn around, notice her left flank. And that's where she kept pointing to, where she feels like she's seeing more definition. And you can see, and this is not even a full month after her 4th treatment, but you have this ability to visualize things, yet at the same time use all these objective measures. And I'm going to show you a few different ways that you can get other data points from the camera. The other beauty of using a system like the one that I have, and I know others do the same thing, is that it takes away the background. You can do it in any room. I struggled for so long to get the right lighting, the right background. How do you reproduce it? What if a room is taken? And this you can take from room to room to room. It's very easy and it's very portable, and it's very, very forgiving when it comes to changing users. It's very easy to use system. And so you could see the background disappears. This is in a regular exam room. My exam room does not have a black backdrop, so it eliminates everything. So this is another way that you can see the measurements, where this is actually a gentleman after his 4 treatments, but it's only 1 week, I think, after his 4th treatment. So it's not a full set of data, right? We want to bring him back ideally 1 month after his 4 treatments, 3 months after his 4 treatments, start doing some booster treatments for him, and again at 6 months. This shows volumetric changes in terms of color gradient. So when you see that bluish color, you're looking at loss or decrease in volume in those areas. Here's another way to visualize. This is with overlays. So you can see the photo on the left, that gray veil, that is what he looks like after, superimposed on where he was at the beginning. And then the picture on the right, the gray veil, shows where he was before he started his treatment. So it allows you to see visually, not with the numbers. Now you're actually seeing where the body has changed, or how the body has changed. So where did that leave me? So I'm still a skeptic, but now I had a lot more evidence, and now I have my own set of experience. And I think being skeptical is very important because it makes us better at what we do. We're expected to be critical thinkers and to be skeptical. And we favor outcomes with strong evidence. I put the baby up there because I liken it to, anyone have kids here?
Oh.
Kids, yes? So in pediatrics, right now, peanut butter, right? You think peanut butter allergy, it's an epidemic. They told us for years now, don't give kids peanut butter until they're a certain age because you're going to ruin them. They're going to have more peanut allergy. Well, they just came out with a new recommendation. Give them peanuts as soon as peanut butter immediately. So things are constantly changing. I remember sitting there when I was giving my toddler at one point years ago a peanut butter sandwich. I read a new recommendation. I grabbed the sandwich. I threw it away. I'm like, sorry, buddy, no more peanut butter for you. Because the data does change, but we have to be open to the new data sets that come to, in front of us, and we have to be able to critically analyze them. Another one is, you have car seats and they're rear facing until they were 1, and babies were sleeping, in sleep positioners. Now I found out that I did everything wrong and I could have ended my kids' lives prematurely. I put them in sleep positioners, they kill babies. Evidence is always changing, and we just can't be, they say there's a difference between being a skeptic and a denialist. You have to be willing to see and hear the evidence. So that's my journey with Emsculpt, and if you have any questions, then...
That was a lovely presentation. Yeah. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome.
Love the photos.
Oh,
yes.
It's a work in progress.
You like the quantifier then?
I've been very, very happy. So I'm still, you learn with the system.
Yeah.
So I haven't, I'm new. So
Right.
I'm still growing with the product, and I've had a lot of support with the product. I think it's important. Actually, Todd is my support right here behind you. Yeah, I needed help pulling up the video because you need to have the support with a system like this. I don't know how to do this without them.
Oh, sure.
And so
Sure.
now I've learned, and now I can do it with them.
Right.
And it's, you have to train all your staff how to use the camera, but it's easy. It basically utilizes the two sets of lights that converge, and when they get to that conversion where it's a single light, you know you're at the appropriate distances and you know your different marks. I use it for facial aesthetics as well, because when you're doing fillers, sometimes a patient comes back and says, I don't see any difference.
Yeah.
And this will measure with that gradient, when you go into kind of the yellows, oranges, and reds, you're seeing increase in volume versus that decrease in volume. And if you can say, oh, well, in fact, your temples are fuller and your under eye hollows are fuller or
And when
softer.
they say, I still don't see it.